how do I know whether this girl or this guy is the one? And she's no longer friendly. She's no longer caring. Like, would I still want to be with her?
Yeah, I'm not ready to be in a relationship right now because my baggage is worth more than my value.
It's like you don't allow me to do things.
I'll be so happy. Oh, this boyfriend, this husband, 100 roses?
Yeah.
I'll buy a new car. Yeah,
I'm allowing her to speak my language.
That's heck.
I mean, it's hard, right? It's not
it is.
easy. And this is where, becoming a better person. Right?
Welcome to Teabreaks with Therapists, where we brew conversations on mental health one sip at a time. I'm your host, Chayan, and in this unique series, we aim to break the stigma surrounding mental health by engaging in bite-sized, insightful interviews with experienced mental health practitioners. So grab your favorite beverage, get cozy, and let's dive into the fascinating world of psychology, one tea break at a time.
Today we have our very special guest, Mr. Alex, here with us today. So for our topic today, we'll talk about relationship or marriage. So no man is an island. We all seek to have a form of intimacy and a sense of belongingness. First things first, Mr. Alex, maybe you can introduce yourself to everyone.
Thanks, Sharon. Good to see you again. So I'm Alex. I'm a clinical psychologist by training. Studied at the International Islamic University, long time ago. So pretty old. I mean, since we're going to talk about relationship, might as well I tell people that I'm married with two children. I used to have this issue last time when I was very young, right? And then we're doing couples or marriage, and the first thing people ask is like, you married? So now at least I can say yes, I'm married. Besides that, I'm also working in an NGO with vulnerable and marginalized children. I also supervise clinical students, and that's why, Chayan used to be my students. I also lecture in private university. So a bit here and there, everywhere.
Wow, you are indeed everywhere. So thank you really for taking your precious time to just have a conversation with us. So to start off, let's just go a little lighter, okay? So not that light, but really for those who are seeking to be in a relationship or even those who are currently in a marriage, how important is it to have compatibility in personality when finding a partner? You know, the sentence where, do opposites attract, or similarities is what make us stick together. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think these are questions are those type of questions that you will never get a satisfactory answer. I'm sure everybody have their own stories to tell, right?
Yeah.
Some people, they get attracted to somebody because they share hobbies together, listen to the same music, stuff like that. Some people, they just they think that they are similar, but then when they get along and then realize actually we are very different. But I think at the end of the day, whether or not you're attracted because of similarities or you're attracted to one another because they complement you in opposite ways, I think what's very important is that this is something that you are committed to do. Now, very interestingly, because I often give talks, right, to schools, young people, and one of the very popular questions I always get, right, is like, how do I know whether this girl or this guy is the one? Right? I mean, for me, there's no the one lah. I look at my own relationship and even my wife, when I asked her about, am I the ideal guy? And she's like, no, you are not. Yes, maybe out of the many ticks, okay lah, half lah, but the rest, you didn't fit, I think the same thing as well with my wife. So there's some things that there's a tick there, but there's also a lot of things that are not ticked, right? Yeah, so I think it's very hard for us to actually find somebody who is perfect fit for you, and I don't believe there's such thing lah. Also, the other thing is the next question that students like to ask or young people like to ask is like, should I get married? And I have this answer that I always tend to give to people. It's like, I always say, if you want to be happy, right, don't get married. It's much easier. Right? You can do whatever you want, make whatever decisions. You want to quit your job, just quit your job. Yeah, but once you get married, right, there's a lot of things for you to consider. Yeah, I mean, last time when I want to, I'm just bored of doing this work and I just want to try something else, I don't have to ask anybody. But now if I think of switching job, right, I think okay, how will it affect my wife? How will it affect my children? So there's definitely a lot more responsibility. But if you want to be a better person, then get married. Because I think marriage do teach you a lot of things about yourself, how to be less of yourself actually, and how to think about other people besides you. And that's painful, but I think at the end of the day, the process actually makes you into a less self-centered person and a person who is able to think beyond him or herself and to consider others also. Yeah. So if you want to be happy, don't get married. If you want to be a better person, then get married. That's what I would say lah.
How do we like have both then? Is it possible?
It's like very hard. Because I'm not saying that
Yeah.
being in a marriage will make you miserable. Yeah, of course, there's a lot of blessings that comes along with it. Of course, once in a while you still feel like, how nice if I was single again, right? But if you ask me now, do I want to go back to my singlehood, which I had a lot already? I got married late, so I've actually enjoyed myself quite a bit. I'll probably say no. So there are struggles, a lot of things that ups and downs, but when I look at my children, I look at my family, I look at my wife, I feel like I think it's worth
Wow, it's interesting. And I like what you already said as well when it comes to marriage or being in a relationship as well. It's a lot about thinking less of yourself and now you have to consider another person's feeling. So in one of my recent sessions as well for my clients, you mentioned that, I'm not ready to be in a relationship right now because my baggage is worth more than my value. So in line with this, right? How...
Sounds so sad.
Yeah. But I mean, when I heard that, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, but how necessary is it for someone to work on themselves first before actually going into a relationship? And how do they actually know when they are prepared for it?
Yeah, I really like your client because he did consider all these things before jumping into a relationship. Because some people, they don't. It's like, okay, I love you and I think this is going to be a beautiful marriage, and they don't think about how their own baggages, how their own past values and things like that can actually affect relationship. And the fact that he actually thought about this, that's actually very, very impressive. I think we all come with baggages, right? None of us go through a perfect life. There have been times that we have been like hurt by people, we've gone through some kind of trauma. Of course, different degrees. Not all of us have been like abused by parents and things like that. But we have all gone through a whole process of life that make us who we are. I mean, some of us, when we talk about baggages, I'm assuming what we're talking about is like those type of, behavioral quirks or emotional weirdness that makes it hard for us to live with somebody, right? I think that's what he actually meant. I think we all come with those sort of things. And to say that I need to resolve all of it, I think at the end of the day, nobody's going to get married. And I think it's fine. But of course, if you have a lot more baggages than normal, and you know that kind of baggage is the one that's going to affect your relationship, then it may be useful for you to at least resolve some of it before you get into a relationship, which is why I think like things like premarital counselling is very, very important. I mean, I had the privilege of going through one, and I think it helped us a lot because when things happen, it's not as if like we were not prepared, like, okay, we knew this is going to happen, right? You come from this type of background, I come from this type of background, we know we're going to clash this way. And we have talked about it. Okay, maybe I just take an extreme example. Let's say if one of us have gone through some kind of abuse, or we've been hurt by a person of a certain gender. So it could be as serious as even sexual abuse, and it's not uncommon nowadays. And one of the greatest struggle of people getting married is like, should I tell my partner? These are the things that happened to me. Sometimes we feel like, okay, I think no need lah because I've overcome it already, right? So it's in the past, it won't matter anymore. But you'll be surprised how some of those past trauma, right, can get triggered so easily when you are in an intimate relationship. Like even a touch, for example, could trigger so many bad memories. And your partner, of course, don't know what happened, right? He might or she might just touch you and then suddenly you like recoil automatically. And then you realize that, no, I've not resolved some of those yet. So I think in those type of cases, it may be good, of course, to be honest with your partner of what's going on, and also maybe to seek some kind of therapy before you get into a relationship. So I'm not saying that just because you're being abused that it will affect you, but for some people, they have not overcome it. And it will come out in a relationship after a while. And in those type of cases, you may need to resolve it, or maybe not so much resolve it, but at least your partner knows that this is something that you have gone through, and it will affect the relationship in a certain way. And I have clients who've like, their partners are okay with it. I mean, I'm talking about things like abuse, so touch is very aversive to them. They cannot, it just triggers a lot of bad memories and bad thoughts. But of course, the husband understand that, okay, my wife, you have to be a bit more careful. And of course, it's something that they will have to overcome over the years. But it can affect And I'm using an extreme example. But there are also less extreme examples in terms of, like, for example, values and beliefs that we hold. Yeah, I won't really call it baggages, but I suppose, when you put two people together from two very different backgrounds, what they expect each other to do, how they see their mother and father show love to one another. Yeah, at the end of the day, it may, translate into how they interact in a relationship as well. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people who are married already know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I think learning about yourself, growing together with your partner is also a lifelong process. It's not just like one time we solve it, that's it.
Very true.
Yeah, and a lot of experiences you got to still learn together. And I think I really like what you said as well about how you view your parents in a certain way, how they interact with one another also would affect how they interact with their own partner. And I also have a concern that was brought up by my client who mentioned like, oh yeah, my father or my mother is like that, I don't want to be like him or her, and they are very afraid of becoming like them, and they see like, wow, the more I see myself, the more I see my mom in me or my dad in me. In your opinion, I'm just very curious, like some people say like, oh, if my father or mother is like that, I'm also going to be like that. Or do you feel like, okay, actually it's a choice when we can decide who we want to be?
Yeah. I mean, of course, we're not trapped by the ways that we have learned from our parents. But the funny thing is, sometimes I also notice that because we don't know alternate ways, and when times of crisis, we often fall back to the ways that we know. I've seen how when my mom and dad get upset, they shout at one another. Yeah, and I tell myself, I will not do that. I will not scream at one another if, let's say, we piece each other off. But of course, at that time when you are, rational, you can think clearly, you can probably tell yourself, no, I'm not going to do that. But when you are already upset, all the emotions are like boiling over, somehow you will resort to what you know because you have not learned any other way.
Yeah.
So if I don't know how to express my anger towards somebody, then what else do I do? I mean, I still need to express it somewhere, and often, sadly, we resort to things that we have already learned and are familiar with. Yeah, and then after that we feel guilty. I shouldn't have done that. But I still did it anyway. And this is very common things. And these are the things like the process that we go through in a relationship in terms of realizing ourselves and learning new ways with the help of our partner. It requires a lot of understanding between the two person, and allowing each other to make that kind of mistakes and room for them to grow without being too critical and judgmental. So that's the hard part.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Mr. Alex, for sharing that. That's very beautiful. In line with that as well, that we have a lot of different values that everyone hold on to. So in your opinion, what are some important values that everyone can hold on to or should in different stages of a relationship? So I would imagine that how when you're just starting to date someone versus in a long-term relationship and versus marriage, it'll be very different. Maybe at the start, like, oh, passion, chemistry is what's important. After that, marriage, as long you got commitment.
Yeah, so I think those terms that you use, right, is what Robert Steinberg, right? His idea of love being in three different forms.
Correct.
I mean, it's nice to think of love as a process. Like, obviously, when you first meet somebody, love at first sight, or all the passion is there, the chemistry you're talking about, right? Then after a while, okay, I need to get to know you more. I cannot be just based on just chemistry only, right? I need to know you as a person. That's where the intimacy develops. And then you begin to understand the person more, what their likes, their dislikes. And then once you decide that, okay, I want to go beyond this, right? Then that's where the commitment starts coming in. Actually, that reminded me of one of the exercises that my premarital counselor did for us. And it was really mind-blowing. And I always use this example for people who wishes to get married. So what my counselor did was he asked us to write down the things that we like about each other. So I write down, okay, my wife's very friendly, not demanding, and then she also will write things that she liked about me and things like that. So we had a whole list of things that we like about each other. Now the next question he asked us, that's something I was not prepared.
Okay.
He asked us, what if one day your wife, your husband is no longer any one of these things? I was like,
Ooh.
damn. Yeah, I think it took us a while for us to even respond. And I think during that time, a lot of thoughts going through my head. And it's so easy for us to love somebody because they are this. But it just happened because I was also teaching a subject called biopsychology. And part of that subject talks about how some people, they got into an accident, brain trauma, and then suddenly their personality changes. Yeah, and then the wife, this is no longer my husband. And in many cases like that, actually ended up with divorce. And so I would ask myself, like, I mean, I don't know, right? What would actually happen? Something like that happened to my wife, and she's no longer friendly. She's no longer caring. Like, would I still want to be with her?
Yeah.
And that was like, whoa, hard question. Yeah, but I told myself then what exactly is marriage? Is it just about me liking you because you are like this, like, or is it a commitment that no matter what happens, I'm still going to stick with you? Okay, I'm not saying that, there is one answer to it. Because there are some people who will decide, like, once this chemistry, this passion is over and we are done. Because nowadays also, like, some people, they don't really believe in marriage. Anyway, they don't believe in the happily ever after. It's like, okay, I marry you for a while. If I don't like you anymore, okay lah, done with. And we are okay with that, right? I mean, there's so many kind of definitions of relationship nowadays. But for me, I think I decided that it is one you decide to get married is forever after kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, so obviously when I got married, which means that my answer to that was yes, I think I'm willing to stay on with you even though you are no longer those things. And I believe my wife probably think the same way also. But it was a very difficult question, but I think it's a very important thing. I don't think people are going to change like that overnight, but what it tells us is like, how much are you willing to commit to this relationship, even though when things become really, really difficult. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people, they don't ask themselves. And then when things become difficult, like, this is not what I signed up for. I thought, when going into marriage, supposed to be happy all the time. Then we realize that things are not going to be what you think it is, and then they begin to start doubting, like, did I make the right decision? Like, did I choose the right person? And then it becomes a bit more difficult.
Yeah, and I think all these, like, how I imagine a relationship will look like, stem a lot from our expectations from observing another person's relationship or marriage. And now we come to that as well. What about comparison then? You know how some people like to see social media, wow, this boyfriend, this husband, 100 roses? Buy a new car.
I think that's a real problem nowadays. Because if you think about it, I mean, at times of my own parents or our great, our grandparents and great-grandparents, they never had this problem that much, because maybe the most they can get is like the gossips, like, like, oh, I know my father or my husband or whatever did this for me. But now, right, we can almost peer into a person's very intimate life. They will post everything, what they buy for their wife on birthdays and things like that. And it's very easy for us to actually start thinking that maybe my relationship don't measure up as compared to what other people are like. I remember once I have this one of my friend, like, wow, they both of them like I mean, at least social media wise, wow, very romantic. And during her birthday, right, the things that he did for her, I was like, can you please stop posting those things, because it really makes me very insecure, because I don't do all those things for my wife. But it's very easy for us to start comparing ourselves. You may feel yourself inadequate or thinking that I should have done all these things for my wife, and if I don't do these things, then I'm a lesser husband, for example. Or your wife may start thinking that, how come other people do that for their wife, you don't do that for me? So I think it's very, very important for us to remember, because one thing is social media, people only post things that we want people to see, right? The highlights, the nice stuff, but nobody wants to post the bad stuff. Anyway, so we always have this impression is that, other people's marriage are so perfect. But we don't know what goes on behind
Closed doors.
right? Behind those smiling faces, all the vacations they go through and all the gifts, we don't know what happens. And you'll be surprised. Those who are the friends who are closer to me, I can see that what they post on their social media and what they're struggling, right? Very, very different. I'm sure we all hear stories like that. And then suddenly, when things go wrong, like, wow, how did that happen? Right? I think that's something that we always want to remind ourselves. Like, number one, people might not show you everything. And number two is like, even if their life is perfect, it is their life. Don't ever start comparing, don't ever start, because once you start doing that, we will never be happy. And of course, we also know by our nature, we always compare things that are lesser, right? We never compare like, hey, actually I have this, they also have this. We always compare things that we don't have, isn't it? And then we stop thinking about the things that actually I got a lot more than that person, but I never compare that. I just compare the part that I don't have. And this biasness also always tend to make us feel as if like, our marriage is not as good as somebody else. I think that's something that we need to be mindful of. of and consciously stop
Yes.
doing. Yeah, of course, by
Yeah.
nature, we are always like comparing, right? But at least being aware of it and knowing how to count our blessings also and not what we have, I think that's something very important. No?
Indeed, and comparison is a thief of joy. So really count your blessings and just know that social media is not
Everything.
correct. That's right. And then how, Mr. Alex, then can couples seek professional help if they do feel there is a need to?
Yeah. Oftentimes, I'm sure you also experience it. They always come to us when things are like, it's like last resort.
Correct.
Right? I don't think we need to do that. Yeah, so I think therapy is not something that you do because you just feel like there's no other way. Yeah, and I think it's okay because basically what we do is just people seeking counsel, helping us see things beyond what. So, because sometimes when you are talking to one another, it's very hard for us to be objective,
Yeah.
right? The moment I say something, you get triggered already, and then in the end, we never have an opportunity to understand each other that much. Yeah, I think for most of the times when we do couple therapy, it's mostly about communication. Sometimes what we do as a therapist is we are like a referee lah, just allowing a space for both sides to hear one another. Of course, you can do this on your own, wonderful. But a lot of times when we're already in some kind of conflict, we already have this very biased kind of perception towards. Yeah, so if I already conclude that you are a cheater, no matter what you say, you'll be a cheater lah.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So even if you do things that does not seem like a cheater, in my mind it's like I cannot believe anything anymore that you say. Yeah. So in those type of cases, maybe you guys might need to, have somebody to just stand in the middle and just help each other see each other for who they are and not what we have labeled each other to be. Yeah, so I think that's one of the things that people should be more open to, right? In terms of therapy. I remember when I was still doing my internship, actually, still very fresh, and of course at that time I was not married, and I really didn't know whether I could do this. And of course, I'm sure a lot of us have this experience of doubting ourselves, as therapists, I'm not married yet, I'm still fresh. And then this couple come in, like, can I really help them? Yeah, but I told myself, okay, let's just focus on what you already know, right? So we know that communication is very important. Yeah, so it just happens that these two couples, they got married in a rush, so they don't really understand each other that much as well. And they have very different views or very different experience in terms of how they show love to one another. Yeah, so basically, it's about love language, and I happen to know a little bit about love languages, right? So I use that principle. Yeah, so what was very interesting was that the husband grew up in a very typical Asian kind of family where, husband provides for the family, my dad gives me everything we need, but there was never an expression of love in a sense of, I tell you I love you, hug the children, all these things, none. Yeah, but very responsible father, take care of all their needs and stuff like that. Now the wife on the other hand come from a very lovey-dovey kind of like huggy kind of a family where, it's very common for the father to tell the mother, I love you. So she gets a lot of hugs from her parents and things like that. And that's how her love language is touch, right? Whereas for the husband, it's more of like, acts of service and things like that. Yeah, so when they got married, they were both speaking very different love languages. Yeah, so the husband, very responsible husband, gives everything that the wife needs and things like that. But one of the things that the wife was saying is like, I don't understand why he doesn't touch me, or when we go out, he doesn't want to hold my hands. Right. And then obviously this affected their relationship because they were both thinking that my husband don't love me anymore. Right. So she felt very affected whenever he tries to, whenever she tries to hold his hand in public, he will kind of like try to brush him off, and it's like for her that's rejection. For him it's just like I just feel very, very uncomfortable with this public display of affection. Yeah, but there was not much communication between them, right? They don't talk about these things, and in the end, and what they did was just keep in mind, rejecting me. And husband also didn't understand why is my wife not happy. I already gave her everything, right? And she's still not happy in this marriage. So then it became quite obvious to me as I was talking to them. But they never actually understood this part of their relationship. Yeah, so what I did was just sit them down and just, all right, you listen to his life story, you listen to her life story, and then they begin to understand that, wow, I didn't realize that my husband come from that kind of family background. And now what?
Yeah.
I understand why is it that he did all these things for me. You know, so when I think about it, yeah, he did give me a lot of things that I need. You know, I was never in want. As soon as I tell him I want this, he will buy for me.
Yeah.
But for her, she didn't see that as an expression of love because that's not her love language. Her love language is touch. She's more concerned that he doesn't want to touch me. Yeah, and then whereas for him, it's like he didn't understand why his wife was not satisfied because for him, I already speak out my love language to you, but the thing is, yeah, that's not her love language. And interestingly, when I got married, it was almost the same thing as well. Yeah, so I'm also the type of person who not very much I love you kind of a person, whereas my wife is, yeah, so hers is
More
also like
expressive.
more expressive and things like that. Yeah, so I do a lot of things for her. So like, you know, drive her from one place to one place, you know, go through traffic jam. But she's like, why you never say I love you? And we always have this argument. It's like, you know, when I drive you, right, from this place to that place, going through all this traffic jam, that's 1,000 I love you, you know. Yeah, but then I had a conversation with my friend, and this is what he said to me. He's like, is it so difficult to say I love you? Not hard, right? So just say it lah. At least she's not asking you to buy her like diamond ring or things like that. Yeah, it's just a word. But for me, it's like, if I don't mean it, doesn't matter, just say it. So I began to consciously like just say it lah. It's not very difficult. So it's an effort for me to learn her love language. Although it's not my language, but I still use it because that's what she understands. So I was still like, okay, consciously, awkwardly, I love you. And it was like, and then of course by that time, you know, once we got married and things become kind of like, it's like, no need to say it. Like, that's what we, that's, I don't know what you call it. Like, is it commitment? Is it like, it's like, I know this is not me, but I'm still willing to be what you want me to be for you. And for her, it's the same thing as well. One of the things that we struggled with was I was very independent. You know, I mean, being single almost an entire life, so I've learned to do everything by myself. You know, I iron my own clothes, I cook my own meals. And when we got married, I remember one day my wife told me, I feel very useless in this relationship. It's like you don't allow me to do things.
I'll be so happy.
I know I can iron my own clothes, I can cook my own meals, but I will let her do it. So what she's trying to do is to express my language of love deliberately. Of course, I know I can do it by myself, but I'm allowing her to speak my language, and I deliberately try to speak her language. And this is the kind of like give and take that we talk about in relationship. Okay, I'm not trying to say that, you know, our marriage is like wow, but it's we learn over the years on how to give in to one another and how to listen to one another and try to be as much as possible what each other wants us to be, without to the point of losing your own identity, which I also feel it's a bit wrong. I don't know whether you guys heard of this, but there's this saying that men marry women with the hope that they don't change, but women marry men with the hope that they do change.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think we need to meet halfway, right? So there will be part of me that, and this is where the, you know, becoming a better person comes in, right? So there's some parts of me that I will change. Some parts of me I will retain. And in the same way as well, you know, there's some part of my wife that she will change, and there's some part of her that she will also retain. And we kind of meet somewhere in the middle. I think that's probably one of the things that we have to learn to do in a relationship.
So it's very important to not just know your own love language, but your partner's as well. So then you can know how to communicate that together.
Because it's kind of simplistic to think of like,
of course.
I'm sure we all speak different kinds of, and there are many ways to just show love besides those, you know, identified 5 love.
Okay. So of course, we would love to hear so much more from you. And before we actually wrap up this episode, what are some important takeaways that you'd like to share with us, to the public here? Anything at all about marriage, about relationship?
Yeah, I think again in our modern society where there's so many definitions of what relationship is, it's easy for us to say that, okay, I don't want to follow. I mean, I know some of my friends who decide that I'm not going to get married. It's good enough for us to just stay together, stuff like that. Yeah, but I think one of the things that I've seen is the effect of marriage and relationships on children. Okay, I know this is a bit off topic, but I think it's something very, very important as well. You know, once you get married and you decide to have kids, right? It's not just between you anymore already. Whatever you all do to one another, decisions that you make, it will affect your children. One of the things I didn't mention earlier that I also work, prior to being a lecturer doing clinical psychology, I was actually working in a children's home. Looking after kids who have been abused, neglected. And a lot of times, the reason why those kids are there is because of decisions that adults make.
Yeah.
It started off with a relationship between a man and a woman. They have these children, things go sour between them, and kids ended up becoming the victim.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we need to be very, very mindful of, because not only do we just hurt one another, but we also hurt our children. And that's something I think we should be mindful and avoid lah.
Yeah.
Because it's very, very sad.
Yeah, they always say the children or the symptom bearers.
Right. I think some of us are victims of that, right? The reason why we are like that is because of how the nature of the relationship between our mom and our dad as well. And I think we don't want that to happen to our children as well. So quite serious. I don't want to end in a so miserable okay, let's not have any relationship. But there are joys, right? There are joys of being in a relationship. I think like what you said in the beginning, that we're not meant to be alone. So even people who are not married crave some kind of relationship. So it's very, very important for us. We want to have somebody in our lives, but it requires a lot more than just what I can get out of this relationship. Maybe that's one thing I want to add also, that I think in any relationship, it's not just about what I get. When you start hearing your clients talk about, he doesn't make me feel like this, or she doesn't make me, then we know okay, this relationship is a little bit, it's a taker, right? And we know those type of relationships are going to be problems. So I don't think that, when two people come together, it's about what I can take from the other person, because if that's what you expect, you'll be very disappointed, because I don't think we're created, like you said, perfect match. None. We all come with rough edges. We doesn't fit properly. We have to cut a few things just to make ourselves fit. And if we expect the person to fulfill all our needs and vice versa, I think we're going to be very, very disappointed. A relationship is like two people coming together, a decision they make. You don't fit well, but you make it work. And what it means is that you don't see a relationship as just something for me to get, but also what I can contribute at the end of the day. And I think that's what a relationship should be. So I also don't believe in this 50-50 thing. I don't know whether you've heard people saying in a relationship, is it 50%, 50%?
Correct.
That's something also I think our premarital counselor talked to us, asked this question, is it 50%, 50%? Now the problem with that, most of us think, probably we should share, right? Responsibility. But the problem with sharing responsibility is you begin to start calculating. Right? It's like, I already done my 50%. Where is your 50%? So what we were taught is think of it as 100%, 100%.
Wow.
I give my 100%, you give your 100%. Now when you don't do your 100%, I don't calculate. It's because I'm in this relationship to give and not just to receive. I know it's very ideal, but I think it helps a lot of times when I start calculating. I already worked so hard already. When I come back, I shouldn't be washing the dishes. You should be doing it. No, I've already done my part. And I feel there's a need to wash the dishes, I wash without being so calculated. I think that helps a lot in our relationship. So maybe I will end with that.
I feel attacked.
I mean, it's hard, right? It's not easy. And this is where becoming a better person, right? I'm not there yet, but I think both me or we are trying to be there. Definitely goes against our natural instinct, but I think that's what relation does. It does make you into a better person. I like to think that I'm a better person now and less self-centered as compared to when I was not married.
Definitely, and that is the beauty of relationship. So of course we only scratch the surface of what relationship entails, what marriage encompasses. So feel free to leave in the comment what exactly do you want to know about relationship. It could be cultural differences, and even parenting would be, I think, an interesting topic as well that we can have a whole recording for. So if this episode really resonates with you, you feel that wow, it has shed so much light and so much insights into relationship, feel free to save this or even share with anybody that you know. So thank you so much for your time and attention to watch this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!